Thanks for staying with us. Tonight, no good news for Nairobians and the millions who rely on its smooth management to survive. Nairobi County wars continue, with Governor Mike Sonko fighting to take back control of a county that he willingly and unprocedurally signed away to the national government. Well, joining us now is County Assembly Speaker Beatrice Elachi to help us make sense of the latest madness surrounding County Hall. Good evening to you, Speaker, and thank you for joining us. So your governor says he's initiated the process to reverse the agreement of transferring some of the county functions over to the national government. What's your take on this?
First of all, when you look at the deed that the governor signed, I need him to underline the word unequivocally. Unequivocally means unmistakable, undisputable, crystal clear. You understood what you were doing. And it's very unfortunate that when my governor says he did not read the deed, then you'll find a lot of challenges in terms of, number one, then did you really understand the word utilities? Which means, it's the usefulness of performing any function. Did you understand the meaning of auxiliary, which I know has been the issue that he has really raised, which means providing necessary support to any primary operations of an organization. And therefore, I think that is where we now find ourselves in a very, in a territory that the governor will have to relook at what he signed and ask himself, what is he going to do with clause 11.2 or 11.1, if I don't, within the deed.
But Speaker, let me put it to you this way. I beg your pardon, because we must fly. But the point is, you've made it very clear. There are very specific terms. And that you imagine that with, in good governance, somebody would read what they were signing. He's gone ahead and said that, he was not furnished with a copy of the same. He says there are people now fighting him. He's going to overturn this process. All this behavior that is incessant in regards to the governor really appears bizarre, to say the least. And beyond the transfer of functions, some would even question whether he's actually fit to hold office if he transferred functions over for a county without reading or without being fully seized of what signing that document means. I mean, are you confident that you have a governor in place who can actually run Nairobi at all?
The most unfortunate thing, Anne, is that when you look at even the functions that we talk about, the 4 functions, there are 4 functions, but they have components in those 4 functions. And therefore, when you count the components of those functions, there are more than 15 functions that you signed away in Schedule 4. For example, if you're talking about health, and allow me just to read the Constitution so that we don't find ourselves again arguing. The health component, what my governor signed out was 1, county health facilities and pharmacies, ambulance services, promotion of health care, licensing and control of undertakings that sell food to the public, veterinary services, cemetery, funeral parlors, and the crematory, and refuse dumps and solid waste disposal. Now, what I just want to tell the team of the governor, which is very unfortunate, you had 21 days to look at this matter. In those 21 days, you needed to critically, the same way we did. Remember, as the county assembly, we were only given an option to be receiving a report after 1 year. We went back and did an addendum and agreed with them that, number 1, we shall be the institution that will appropriate finances to the NMS because one of the things, again, where the team doesn't look at, it does not matter whether there's NMS or anything. In your agreement, you have left it to the national government. And it's clear, it says, the national government shall prescribe and establish an institutional framework for the execution of the transferred functions. Meaning, they can decide to bring NMS, they can decide to take it to the mainstream ministries, but 7.1 is clear as you signed. So, and at every page, it has been signed.
That's why I want to ask it to you this way, Madam Speaker. So what is really going on here? Is this about succession politics? Is it about control of county revenues? Is it about Jubilee having made a mistake to begin with, right from, elections and the nomination? What? I fail to find another word other than madness is this that this city is incessantly being treated to.
I think I would say it is unfortunate that with the goodwill of the president, who felt that indeed we've not given Nairobi services, that this would have been the best route. Article 187 would have been the best route. We've come in as the county assembly. We've removed ourselves under the bus. We are back on the table. And now we have done what is rightful based on the transfer of deeds. And you'll still find ourselves fighting because of the appropriation bill, which is very unfortunate. And still, the team of the governor, very unfortunate that they never looked at what the predecessor did. Even just reading what the last assembly did is very important on how your office runs. For example, we are told that we cannot publish the appropriation bill, yet the county attorney holds an office in the county government of Nairobi, a bill that was never ascended to by Kidero. But today it has benefited, and we've paid people more than 1.2 billion shillings in terms of legal fees in an office that was never, a bill that was never ascended to as an act. The other bill that I want to remind them, it is the Nairobi City County Public Service Participation Act.
Right.
Kidero never signed, but it became law and we are using it today. The other law I will remind them is the Nairobi City County Dog Control and Welfare Act. He never ascended to it and we are using it. In terms of resources, when you transfer 15 functions, definitely the amount of money that goes with that will be a huge amount. And therefore, I would say, as you call it madness or whatever, I don't want to call it madness, and I just want to say, I need my governor now to reflect in his leadership, his governance, the team that is around him, and he needs to ask himself, has the team guided him based on the law? Because for me, one of the things I have to do is that in the county assembly, we must follow the law. Yeah. You cannot come out and tell us that we have gone against the constitution, or while you know very well, within the constitution is where we've gotten the issue of functions follow resources follow functions. Resources follow functions. The liabilities and the assets must go with the functions that any of the government has transferred. But Speaker, just to say that, yes.
I beg your pardon. This is my final question, and please, ma'am, if you would be brief. Therefore, as we conclude, and you've been very diplomatic in how you're phrasing it and pushing the back on the governor's advisors. I mean, at the end of the day, we're in the middle of a health emergency, all right, COVID-19. Nairobi has been perpetually in crisis in terms of the infrastructure. Beyond that, food security. An average Nairobi family cannot afford food. So when you have these wrangles going on, some services have been transferred, then the governor is trying to hold back on powers. We don't know if you're going to be back in court over this properly. How does this impact service delivery to the average city resident? And beyond that, would anyone ever, why would any Nairobian ever vote Jubilee again?
Well, let me start with the last one. I doubt whether they will ever vote for us because of what we've just put them through. Number two, I think if we give the opportunity, the proposals of the president in terms of NMS, I think so far the general has been able to, just in 6 weeks, been able to drill 52 boreholes that they will be launching very soon in terms of clean water in the slum areas. I think he has started now on roads. I believe if both of us can just agree that one thing, the president has goodwill to have a legacy of Nairobi. The conflict that I see, I'm wondering, in the end of the day, who are we working for? I think we are just all of us working for Nairobi. And I'm praying that in the spirit of the governor, and I pray that the governor can now, my governor, can seek the Lord, seek God to guide him. Because in leadership, we also, when we find ourselves in such territories, we ask God to guide us, give us wisdom. And I'm praying that God will give my governor wisdom to understand that the head of state has been so good to him, so kind to him. I mean, if I look at what Waititu went through and what he has gone through, he has been given a dangling carrot. Now, when you argue and both of us are from the same party, the party of the president, who is the party leader, then it seems that we never even felt, we are not in tandem in what the party leader really wants. And this is a capital city. It's not for anyone. It is for the party leader to ensure the services that go to Nairobians, not just Nairobians, but the diplomatic corps that is in the capital city of Nairobi, being the hub of Kenya that opens Africa. I think it is time. And I want to plead with him that, you know what? In the end of the day, General is working for Nairobi for you.
Wow.
The day we understand that, we will have no conflict. General doesn't need any political persuasion. He doesn't need any gains. He is not in need of anybody to flash him with something for him to get his name. No.
Right.
And I think we have to stop all this drama that we are doing in front of the president.
Yes.
And now focus and give the president the support he requires. The county assembly gave him assurance at State House and that we will give him 150% support.
Right.
And therefore,
yes,
for me, the 150% support is anything that deals with NMS for the president.
Right.
I will stand with it. Let me be abused. Let me be told all names, but let's follow the law.
All right.
The law will set us free. The law.
The law and the Lord, whom you've asked the governor to seek. Speaker Beatrice Elachi, thank you for your time. Unfortunately, we have to let you go right now. The County Assembly Speaker for Nairobi.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. And we want to get more insight for you. Let's now turn over and speak to constitutional lawyer Kamotho Waiganjo. How constitutional was this move to begin with? And Kamotho joins us now from his home via Skype. So let's start with this. First, what exactly does the deed of transfer mean? Where is the line in terms of the separation of powers between national government and county government?
Well, the deed of transfer is fairly clear in the sense that the Nairobi County government, unfortunately, the way the law is structured now, the Nairobi County government means the governor signed a deed of transfer, signed a deed that transferred four functions, four primary functions of the county government to the national government. And the law requires that if you transfer those functions, you transfer them together with the resources necessary to carry out those functions. So in terms of, as a matter of law, that transfer happened. One can argue as to whether the processes could have been done differently, but the transfer was done effectively. And in fact, steps have been taken to implement the performance of the functions.
So having said that, and we'll return to process because the devil is in the detail, obviously, but from where you sit, so far, has there been indication that national government has in some way overstepped or infringed upon something beyond the deed of transfer?
Not on the face of it. I think, Anu, one has to recognize that I don't think in the restructuring of the law, nobody ever imagined that the transfers would be done from the county governments to national governments. The assumptions had always been that it's the national government that will be transferring powers to county governments. So because this was not foreseen, there are a lot of things that were not provided for, including the oversight mechanisms. Who is going to oversee? Is this entity accountable to the county assembly? What does the transfer of resources mean? How are those resources going to be budgeted, appropriated? Are they appropriated by the National Assembly as a vote of the Ministry of Devolution, or are they appropriated through the County Assembly? So a lot of those things were left unclear. So it's difficult to say that there has been default. One can argue that the law did not, anticipate this. but it's difficult to see where there has been default.
In your opinion, is this a legal problem or a political one?
It purely is a political problem. The truth of the matter is that the legal process had its own challenges, and that is a challenge of the law as it is today. One can argue that the fact that the public participation happened after the event, that then maybe that puts question into the validity of the deed. But those, I think, are peripheral issues. At the end of the day, the dispute is essentially a political one. Even when the governor says he had not read the document, that is not an argument you can take to any court of law, but it's a valid political argument. So even the disagreements are not really issues of law, but issues of politics, as opposed to issues of law as such.
Yes, and though the governor, I beg your pardon, is threatening court action, and I think some court action has already begun with Okiya Omtata moving to court on some of these issues. It has been pointed out many times that the current administration has been described as notorious in terms of disregarding court orders, in terms of, ignoring a few steps. Does the egg come before the chicken, and that sort of thing? So in the current scenario, there's in fact no telling that even if one did go to court, that court orders would be obeyed anyway. So in sum, is Nairobi County just a lawless charade, in your opinion?
The reality is that this is a difficult one for the county government to take to court successfully. A third party probably can. Part of the reason being that the way the deed itself is structured, the way the Intergovernmental Relations Act is structured, it requires that issues of this nature are resolved politically. That is why it requires that all manner of disputes are taken to the summit long before they go to the courts. And I suspect that if the matter go to either they would not give a hearing to the county government before it goes, it abides with the ADR requirements, and even if it goes through the ADR requirements, it's very difficult to see how you can have that deed being set aside. Because remember that even the Council of Governors supported the process as a matter of law. Remember that politically also the county government of Nairobi has been in shambles from the beginning. Remember that the problem we have today is a creation of the county government itself, and the fact that we didn't have a deputy governor, so therefore there was no succession planning, and it looked like if Governor Sonko was to leave, would have had to go to an election. So this was almost the only option available to salvage what was almost a difficult situation. And I'm not seeing how, both as a matter of law and as a matter of politics, that it's going to be easy to undo this.
But at the same time, you'll remember that before this deed of transfer took place, Governor Sonko was already in court. He had been pretty much charged with, abuse of office, I believe. And beyond that, there was a politics around it with the Council of Governors sort of appearing to come towards his aid. There has been, since the onset of devolution, this tug of war between national government and devolved government. How do you see this case setting any sort of precedent in terms of the relationship of national and county governments going forward?
I think that one of the realities is it's an unfortunate situation where the law as it is today allows a governor by himself to transfer the entire functions for which a whole government was elected and all the resources of the county to the national government. That was untenable. That was never anticipated by the Constitution. This is a process that needed to by the time you get to the point where you're transferring functions, there needed to be fairly numerous procedural steps to ensure that as many possible institutions, the county assembly, the cabinet itself, the people through public participation had been consulted. As it is now, the possibility is that any county governor, for whatever reason, can decide, on the whim of a moment, to transfer powers and functions and resources to the national government. That is very dangerous for the process of devolution. But don't forget that Nairobi was a special case because Nairobi was dysfunctional. By the time we got here, Nairobi, everybody recognized that whatever we needed to get services in Nairobi going on. But I don't think that is something that we want to replicate. And I'd be saying that the Senate right now should have some law that puts sufficient safeguards to ensure that you don't subvert democracy through this person, by leaving this to one person. In fact, the fact that the governor is saying, I didn't read, tells you the enormity of the situation. We are saying one person was responsible for transferring the entire architecture of the city to a national government without having to consult anyone. There is something significantly problematic constitutionally with that arrangement. But that was one of those things that, in a sense, the government's made a pragmatic decision. But it is not something that should be replicated in the future. We need to put safeguards to ensure that if we ever need to go there, there have been sufficient consultations and sufficient grounds have been established that this is the only route available to resolve the problems of the county.
Kamodo Iganjo, thank you very much, sir, for speaking to us tonight.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay.
All right, more news after this.